This video is partially going to be considered a reaction to the Lions' Thanksgiving Day loss at home to the Packers. Additionally, it's going to be a commentary style video. Won't offer any film study here. The film of that game won't come out until Friday evening, at which time I'll put out some film talking about the defense and some of the miscues on offense. The inability to block Rashawn Gary was kind of shocking to me, but I'm going to focus here in this video on the last 12 quarters of defensive football that the Lions have played. It's my opinion, it just has not been anywhere near the quality needed to be a consistent, high-level football team playing complementary football within the offense, defense, and special teams. Other factors play a role, clearly. Faked a punt on Thursday against the Packers, didn't get it. A defensive touchdown scored by the Packers as well contributes to the final score. The offense obviously plays a role. 7 turnovers, I believe, in the last 8 quarters for Ben Johnson's group. And if you extrapolate beyond my focus here, which is really going to be the last 3 football games, you've got 11 turnovers since the Week 7 game against the Ravens. I think that the offense's efficiency has dipped. Their ability to execute things has dipped as well. The offensive line instability, I think, is a real issue. The Packers, like I said, got a defensive touchdown on Thursday. Taylor Decker had a ton of problems with Rashawn Gary. So the offense does bear blame as well, and I don't want to ignore that. But for me, I'm going to focus on the defense here and what I believe was a missed opportunity to address talent deficiencies around the trade deadline. Because regardless of how many turnovers are Goff's fault, and certainly some of them are, the offense can improve. Things can improve. We've seen them improve. We have data of high-level offensive functioning, particularly on the road against the Los Angeles Chargers. The pass pro's been inconsistent since that time. The run game, I think, has been quite variable against the Bears and Packers. Let's put it that way. I know that they did run the ball well to finish the game against the Bears, and they finished with 140 against the Packers. I still think there's times where the run game looks less than ideal, and I think that's related to the offensive line. With Jackson being out the last 2 games, I think that's had an impact. I think to adapt defensively is going to be the harder challenge because I don't think the talent level, there's not as much depth of talent on the defensive side of the ball as there is on the offensive side. Hopefully I said that in a way that makes sense, number one. Number two, I believe Ben Johnson and the offensive staff will find a way to adapt to a lot of the zone coverages that they're seeing recently, particularly by the Bears and the Packers. I think those things can be fixed, basically, is what I'm saying, or they can return to what I would consider normal productivity and efficiency levels for Ben Johnson's offense. In this video, I'm going to tell you that I believe the defense's ceiling is capped. Now, is it capped at what we saw on the Thanksgiving Day game against the Packers? No. They can play better than that. Absolutely, I believe that. But I do believe there is a ceiling for this defense's ability to stop people. And that's because of the lack of ability to get pressure on the quarterback while remain sound in coverage and make plays on the ball. Is this an Aaron Glenn problem? Because at times it does look like very basic defenses are being called in terms of not presenting the offensive line and the quarterback with multiple looks. Is it just a talent problem on defense? Do they really miss C.J. Gardner-Johnson and James Houston IV that much? Has the season-ending injury to Mosley and those 2 aforementioned players being out for extended periods of time, both projected starters, I would say, has it put the defense at such risk that you see the things that you've seen the last 3 weeks in terms of allowing 31 points per game against the Chargers, Bears, and Packers? Prior to that, you have an outstanding defensive performance against the Raiders at home before the bye, but Josh McDaniels was fired, I believe, 48 hours later. If we were to extrapolate out further defensively, looking at the stats, looking at just points per game allowed, the 5th column from the left for you guys in this graphic, 29 points, 26 points, 38 points, and 38 points to the Ravens. 4 out of the last 5 games, you're either at the 30-point per game allowed threshold, or you're just below it in terms of the Bears scoring 26. And the Bears are not a super talented offensive team. In my opinion, all of those factors, all of those questions I asked are factors, I should say. I just do not think that right now the defense has the overall talent level at the defensive end, outside linebacker position, and corner position to overcome any dip in productivity by Aiden Hutchinson. And what I mean by that is Aiden Hutchinson has been inconsistent in winning lately. He just hasn't been able to single-handedly dominate the last 4 or 5 weeks. Got his season stats showing up here. Is he having a great year? Yes, he is. A very good year, however you want to qualify it. But in the last 6 games is 1 sack, and that was against the Bears, the final defensive snap, the strip sack against Justin Fields. Huge impact play in that come-from-behind victory. He has 5 other quarterback hits in those other 5 games. I feel like all too often he's not being freed up to attack. And here's my assertion. If you look at some of his memorable plays this year, a lot of them have come when the opposing team is almost in like 100% pass mode. The strip sack to finish the game against Carolina. The strip sack to finish the game against the Bears, basically. I wonder if he's being unleashed to attack the quarterback enough. Let me phrase it that way. I should say, since week 6 against the Bucs, he seems to be less free to go attack. And I don't know if that's a pass protection issue, meaning the other team is devoting more players to him. I did do a film study video on him in the last 2 weeks, showing how often he was being chipped or chip released by a running back or a tight end. I do think that's a factor. But my main thought is, with Aiden Hutchinson on the other side being a known quantity, for me at least, you know what you're going to get. You're going to get high-level production. You're going to get high-level effort. You will get some pressure at times, although he only has 5.5 sacks this year. But he's the type of player that can all of a sudden give you 4.5 sacks over a 3-week period. My main thought is, for this team, I don't think there's any more window to address the talent deficiency. And I'm not talking about the draft, mind you. I mean, once we're in the season and the coaches can see how the aforementioned injuries to James Houston IV, C.J. Gardner-Johnson are limiting the defense, your team potential, if you ask me, is capped. If you can't get to the quarterback consistently and exert some physical pressure, and you're choosing to let that happen each week. No one chose to let those guys get hurt, particularly Emmanuel Mosley, who came back and tried to give it a go one game and then suffered a torn ACL again. To me, this is a consistent theme now. Each week, the opposing team's quarterback is not under any physical pressure in most situations, not under any physical pressure in terms of someone in his face to prevent him from making an accurate throw. I think that those problems are compounded by lack of mental pressure being exerted on the quarterback, meaning what the Lions appear to be presenting to me is very basic schemes on defense, and that creates a toxic mix. No physical pressure on the quarterback and not much mental processing for them to go to try to figure out what coverage is it, where can I throw the football. I'm going to make a comparison. In the last 2 weeks at home against the Bears and Packers, I've seen Jared Goff double pump to throw the football probably 5 or 6 times, meaning get back in his drop, get ready to throw, act as if he's going to throw, and then have to hold on to the football. Perhaps a defender was in a window or a receiver read a different route. I haven't seen that once in the last 3 weeks, for the opposing team's quarterback. It doesn't look like they are being confused at all by the coverage schemes and the blitzes that the Lions are choosing to deploy. Hopefully I said that in a way that makes sense. Now, I did address this issue somewhat in a film study video already, so I'll link that here. I put it out in late October about how to fix Detroit's defense. Become a little bit more multiple. Utilize safer blitz pressures. I haven't even seen those deployed here recently, meaning different ways to just bring 4 and retain 7 in coverage, whatever zone umbrella you want to utilize. Talking about basically since week 6, the 20-6 win in Tampa Bay, which is a good win. Only had 1 sack in that game on the road. It was Julian Okwara. Week 7 against the Ravens, 0 sacks. 1 quarterback hit total. Week 8, dominant win over the Raiders, 6 sacks and 9 quarterback hits. Like I said, I believe Josh McDaniels was fired a couple of days later. You get a bye, and then go on the road and give up 38 points and 420 yards of offense while not sacking Justin Herbert. Last Sunday, they'll come from my win against the Bears. Yes, there's 2 sacks, the second of which is Hutchinson's game ender against Fields. The Bears also put up 25 first downs that day. They controlled the football for 40 minutes in a game that, if you ask me, they were in charge of for 70 to 75% of the day. Thanksgiving Day against Jordan Love. He goes 22 of 32 with 3 touchdowns, a 125 quarterback rating. Right now, the Lions, I believe, have 23 sacks on the season. I've got the stats up here for the least amount of sacks, the most amount of touchdowns allowed passing in the league. And the Lions are 4th worst. They've allowed 19 touchdown passes, only have 23 sacks, and have allowed 2,500 passing yards so far through 11 games. 28th most, I believe, touchdown passes allowed. And they have the 10th least number of sacks, which is 23. I believe 18 of those sacks have come in 4 games. I may have done my math wrong there. Scoring defense for the Lions is also right now at 23 points per game. And over the last 3, against the Chargers, Bears, and Packers, that number is 31 points per game allowed in the last 3 weeks. It was at 22, roughly almost 22, for the last 10 to 12 weeks of 2022 when John Kaminsky was back playing healthy, James Houston IV had his brilliant run, Aiden Hutchinson was playing well. If they could get to somewhere around that number, 22, they can win a lot of football games, if you ask me. But right now, it's not going well, in my opinion. You may have a different opinion. I know Don Burr is one who says that he thinks the whole problem is Aaron Glenn. And I'm not saying that that's not part of the issue. Ben Johnson's offense is part of the issue. They've turned the football over a lot in the last 4 or 5 weeks. So it's not all Aaron Glenn's fault for the entirety of the team's win-loss record. And in fact, I think the missed opportunity at the trade deadline to boost the talent level of this defense is one of the larger considerations that rarely gets mentioned. Whether you're talking about Chase Young, who was obtained for a 3rd-round comp pick, which is essentially a 4th-round pick, or the guy that the Bears acquired who had a sack against the Lions. The 2nd-round pick was what it took to get him. The offensive talent, in my opinion, is good enough to get the job done against almost anybody. They just need to get healthy on the offensive line and not turn the football over and be able to run the football. But so far, for me at least recently, I have not seen any ability to consistently pressure the quarterback on the defensive side of the football. And if we had seen it against mobile quarterbacks then we would say, okay, they're capable of doing those things. I don't think that they are right now. Absent some drastic scheme change that theoretically could open you up to larger pass plays down the field if you don't get there. I am confused now by the Lions getting Donovan Peoples-Jones for a 6th-round pick. I'm not really sure that they needed a wide receiver. It doesn't seem to me as if that was the largest need for this team. In my opinion, they needed a talent boost at outside linebacker or D-end, with James Houston IV being out so long, and perhaps even at corner, to be honest with you. There was talent out there to grab on defense. Brad Holmes in the front office just didn't go get anyone. Maybe they explored the option. Maybe they offered someone, and maybe the price tag was too high. And nonetheless, Aiden Hutchinson and Aaron Glenn, in my opinion, don't have enough help right now. However, if C.J. Gardner-Johnson and James Houston IV can return in the next month, and they're fully healthy, they can help. I think that's clear. C.J. Gardner-Johnson is just a whirlwind. He can play anywhere and make plays anywhere. He's a very versatile piece. If James Houston IV comes back, personally I'm a huge fan of his, but I'm not sure that after being out for 12 or 14 weeks, we can really expect James Houston IV to catch lightning in a bottle once again. If that happens, and C.J. Gardner-Johnson returns to his high level of play, then I think all is well, and the Lions can handle anybody in the playoffs. They need someone on the other side, in my opinion, to be able to get after the quarterback and kind of balance things out in disrupting the offense's flow. Because there's too often Aiden Hutchinson will come close to getting a win, particularly lately, and there's no disruption on the opposite side. Before we finish this up, I want to look at the last 3 weeks in a row. It's my opinion that there's been too many stretches here in weeks 10, 11, and 12 where the defense is just unable to control the offenses at all. So I've broken this down by game. Chargers and Bears scored on 6 possessions each. 6 out of 9 for the Chargers, 6 out of 10 for the Bears. And both of them had second halves where they really moved the football well against the Lions. Chargers, 3 possessions, 3 touchdowns. Bears went field goal, touchdown, field goal, field goal. Also had a punt and then the strip sack in the second half as well. But in any case, you're still talking about 4 scores against the Lions defense on the road in Detroit. The Packers game was a separate issue. Touchdown, touchdown, punt, field goal to open the game. Love had 3 touchdown passes. You can see at the bottom, only 2 sacks generated combined in the last 3 weeks. Is it a situation where Aaron Glenn doesn't want to get pressure on the quarterback? No. I think it's a situation where they don't have enough guys who are able to win. Are able to win in those one-on-one matchups, number one. And number two, it does seem like there's times where Aaron Glenn's a little too conservative and doesn't want to commit to getting pressure for whatever reason. These stretches, the second half against the Chargers and the Bears, the first half against the Packers, to me indicate a lack of talent, particularly at those 2 positions that I've mentioned. Is there someone else, some other defensive coordinator who could get this defense to play better, to be more efficient and more multiple? Of course. How much better? 20% better? 30% better? I'm not sure. Maybe if you increase the physical pressure on the quarterback by 8 to 10%, and you increase the mental pressure on the quarterback by being multiple but yet sound in coverage by another 8 to 10%, maybe you could achieve the desired result, cutting off 2 to 3 or 4 points allowed per game. If this Lions team was to get it down to 20 points allowed per game, which is where it was earlier before the visit to Baltimore in Week 7, I think it's possible that you could be a 9-2, 10-1 type team. I'm not talking about retroactively saying you should have won this game or should have won that game. I'm talking about the record being an indication of how well you're playing offensively and defensively and on special teams. At least to me, right now, it seems like the defense is almost out of options. And maybe with the extended time off between Thanksgiving and then the December 3rd game at New Orleans, maybe they'll come up with some answers. Maybe they'll come up with some ways to get pressure and still be sound and not give up large passing lanes for the quarterback to find. It's a long way until that day. We have a long wait until their Week 13 visit to New Orleans. And then 7 days later, you have a rematch with the Bears in Chicago. And the Bears ran for 183 plus yards in Detroit. Those 2 games and the time between now and then really offer the Lions a chance to right the ship, fix problems, address issues, whatever phrase you want to use defensively, to squeeze as much out of this group as is possibly there in terms of the talent. You got 5 games in December that I think are going to determine how often Detroit plays at home in the playoffs, or if they play on the road in the playoffs versus at home. New Orleans is 5-5. The Broncos are 5-5. Vikings are 6-5. Then you got the Cowboys 8-3. All 4 of those games, if memory serves, are on the road. Perhaps the Broncos game is at home, so maybe I'm wrong there. I think it's a huge stretch, and now that they've missed the window to have a quick fix for defensive end or corner in terms of acquiring talent at the trade deadline. Now that they've missed that window, the only other way to do so is to get C.J. Gardner-Johnson and James Houston IV healthy, and hopefully they return to form quickly, and then integrate them into a defensive system that's more multiple, that exerts more mental pressure on the quarterback, causes them more pause or delay in trying to go through their reads and find the open man. Because right now, here recently, even though the Bears didn't throw for a lot of yards in Detroit last week, they still moved the football well and had 25 first downs. Justin Fields missed a 3rd down throw that would have closed out the game by about 4 to 6 inches. Plays were there to be made in the pass game for the Bears, just like they were this past week. The only difference is Jordan Love wasn't pressured at all, number one. And number 2, he hit all of the throws he needed to. Really shredded the Lions' pass defense, if you ask me. And it wasn't fun to sit and watch on Thanksgiving Day. I wasn't able to get out a reaction video on Thanksgiving because there was so much family around, so forgive me for that. I took the rest of the day, most of the day Friday, I should say, and tried to look at the game again. And at this juncture, my observation is such that I don't think they can continue doing the things they're doing, vanilla game plan in terms of pressure versus coverage, and expect to get different outcomes right now. And you may disagree. Feel free to let me know in the comment section what your thoughts are about the scheme, about the talent level. Certainly the offense turning the football over a lot did not help Aaron Glenn's defense at all. If you don't turn the football over and get a defensive touchdown, if you don't go for it on special teams from your own, I think 29 or something like that, and not get it and fail, then maybe you don't give up 29 points in the first place. The margin for error is small, and unfortunately, I think as we found out here recently with the Lions, defensively, the margin for error is a lot smaller than right now Aaron Glenn, Aiden Hutchinson, and others have been able to account for so far. Appreciate you guys' time. Let me know what you think of the video in the comment section. If you think other Lions fans would enjoy this commentary look at how the defense has played recently, then please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach. I will have some film study videos coming out Friday night and Saturday morning from the Thanksgiving Day game against the Packers. Appreciate you guys' time.